I am a Deputy Director here at Housing and Community Development for the City of Tucson. We'll start with a few introductions. And so Terry, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Terry Galligan. I'm also a Deputy Director at Housing and Community Development for the City of Tucson. And for any comments that you have, you'll see on the slides that I am the point person for any comments you have about the city's annual action plan. So welcome and thank you for being here today.
Great. And Joel, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joel Gastelum. I'm with Pima County. I'm a program manager and I run our CDBG program here. So City was kind enough to let us kind of take a little bit of y'all's time and fill you in on the county process and how we go about doing our annual action plan. So once again, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Joel. We'll turn it over to him in a bit. Rachel, do you mind introducing yourself and letting people know about the sign-in form?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Hutchinson, Graphics and Communication Specialist with the City of Tucson Housing and Community Development. And I'm going to stick a sign-in sheet in the chat. So if you could just sign in really quickly so we know that you attended. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe she's putting in a link and it will take you to a form that will take you no more than 15 seconds to just put who you are. As many of you on this call know, if you're on this call, you're familiar with the Federal Housing and Urban Development. So in terms of we have to show that we're doing this public meeting. So speaking of, thank you for, as Terry had said, thank you for being here today. So Terry and I it's still our first year here at Housing and Community Development. So we are learning all the things that we have to do and knowing that creating an annual action plan is one of them. So today's meeting is about the process we use to create the action plan this year. It's a draft plan and we'll talk more about that. I do have a super short presentation. And I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to also, as we talked about, we're going to piggyback a little bit with the county. But so thank you again for being here. So this meeting is to talk about our fiscal year 2022 annual action plan. So this is the funding we receive and distribute and do good things with between July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. And so quick agenda for today. We are going to do a really short overview of the HUD planning process and why we're holding this meeting today. We'll talk a little bit about the 5-year consolidated plan and what that is and what that means. And then the city this year, we created a new plan, a roadmap for the department called the People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and how it ties into the annual action plan. We'll turn it over to the county to talk about their process. And then we'll give an overview of what the funding landscape looks like for fiscal year 2022 and timeline and next steps for the annual action plan adoption. We'll also have time for questions at the end. So as I mentioned, I am still learning all of the nuts and bolts of the HUD entitlement programs. But what I do know is that there are certain requirements, a few key requirements we need to do to make sure that we receive the money from HUD to support a lot of the great work that we do in the community. So this slide is an overview of what's required. Our 5-year consolidated plan was Mayor and Council adopted in 2020. And so we are in the first year of that consolidated plan. For the annual action plan that we've created and we're talking about today, that will be the 2nd year of the consolidated plan. So we have the 5-year consolidated plan, that's a requirement. We have the 1-year annual action plan, and then the 1-year consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, or CAPER. For those of you that receive funding from the city, you probably know all about this in terms of the requirements in tracking that funding and turning it into a report that goes into the CAPER each year. In terms of what are the HUD entitlement programs, what do they fund? Again, I feel like many of you on this call can teach me a lot about what you are all doing, but we know that we have the community development block grant funds. Those can do a range of things: neighborhood improvements, helping support human services, boosting economic development, and also public facilities, things like libraries and fire stations. We have the home investment program that supports affordable and home ownership. And then additional programs, emergency solutions grant funding, HOPWA funding, our lead hazard control program. So there is a lot that we do with that HUD money, and really want to make sure we continue to receive that HUD money. So this is a word cloud that Liz had created talking about the money that HCD distributes to social service agencies in Tucson. And so over 25 agencies currently are receiving funding, and this is the types of programs and services that they offer. And so this year we created in 2020, the consolidated plan was adopted. And at the same time, we all know how challenging 2020 was and everything that happened in 2020. And so during our budget process last year, this is a word cloud of words that came out of the budget process from community participation, saying what they really wanted people in Tucson, what they really were hoping the budget in Tucson would fund. So things like funding community programs and looking at racial equity and looking at transportation and looking at homeless issues. And so in thinking about how to create a roadmap for housing and community development into the future, what we realized is the services that HCD does each year are really critical to what we're calling an infrastructure of opportunity for the city. So really thinking about how to best support Tucson. And that's where we came up with this idea of people, community, and communities and homes. So here is a super quick overview of what we mean by that. So the people side, thanks to the funding we receive, we can help support organizations in the community that help individuals and families. Communities, we also recognize that there's a larger ecosystem and landscape that supports those individuals and families. So looking at trying to support community organizations and public facilities in neighborhoods. And then last but not least, homes, thinking about how to provide more affordable housing in our community, provide home ownership opportunities, and look at rehabilitating and trying to maintain the affordable units that are there today. And so this past year, we created the People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan. And part of the idea with this is it builds off of the consolidated plan. Many of you probably know the consolidated plan, being a HUD requirement, is very prescribed in terms of how it's put together. And we wanted to create a document that really highlights the challenges based on data and based on information we've received from a lot of different community stakeholders and residents. So we created that plan to think about how to move forward. And so the plan touches on a lot of different aspects. There's 4 sections. We tried to tie in as much work as we could and not reinvent the wheel. Identified 6 key challenge areas, identified priorities and goals to get to that area, and then focus on how to implement. And so over the next 5 years, our goal is to really look at how do we tie what HCD is doing and the funding we give out and the work that we're doing day to day to that plan. And so wanted to just kind of give that as some background in talking about the annual action plan and how PCHIP builds into the annual action plan. And I'll talk about that more in a bit, but I'm going to actually turn it over now to Joel to talk about the county's process in this. In terms of the HUD program and the consolidated plan, that is a collaboration with Pima County. And so really grateful that Joel's here today.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate it. Once again, some of y'all may be familiar with our process, but in case you're not, kind of wanted just to give you all a brief overview of kind of how the county is doing things. Righty. All right. So again, this will be a brief presentation. Again, if you have any questions, comments, I'll leave my contact info at the end of this PowerPoint. Please feel free to reach out at any time. But again, Ann, thanks for the intro, and you kind of covered a lot of the easy stuff for me, kind of the purpose of the HUD funds and you know, the consolidated plan, the annual action plan, some of these other different various federal planning processes. So thank you, appreciate that, making my job a little easier here. But in any case, you know, our HUD funds are used to revitalize lower income neighborhoods through housing rehab, public facilities, infrastructure improvements, as well as the provision of public services. And again, HUD determines the allocations of various communities across the country receive based on population, income, and various housing conditions. And all CDBG activities must meet one of three national objectives. The one that, you know, the city as well as the county and nationwide, for the most part, it's benefiting low to moderate income folks. As far as the eligible activities and requirements on public services, that's the kind of the hard and competitive kind of activities to get in. Per the federal regs, there's a 15% cap overall on those types of activities. And the county, kind of with those activities, we generally fund youth programs, the staff that are working at the food pantries, things of that sort. When we get into public facilities and infrastructure improvements, a lot of the different projects we see being applied for are small capital improvement projects. Your HVACs, roofs to some nonprofits, small commercial equipment type things in your rural food banks, things of that sort. Again, with some of the public facility and infrastructure improvements, there must be site control. We conduct environmental review on the project. Also, there must be clean project management from start to finish, whether that be through an outside contractor or through the agency itself. Additionally, because it's federal funds, Davis-Bacon prevailing wages come into play, as well as different various federal labor standards. In addition, we place a lien on the property for 5 years to ensure there's a programming commitment. Additionally, of course, everybody's got to love that federal procurement process. So we got to ensure there's 3 bids, all those formal fun things. So it's always a good thing. One of the highest priorities in Pima County, though, is housing rehab. We dedicate quite a bit of funding towards that, not only through our internal department, also through some of our subrecipient agencies. And we also fund some of the local governments as well. So we work with the town of Marana as well as the city of South Tucson because they're one of our urban county cooperative partners. And Ann touched on kind of the purpose of the annual action plan being that HUD document, as well as that, you know, having that relationship to the overall 5-year consolidated plan. And as Ann mentioned, you know, we worked closely this past year in adopting that 2020-2024 con plan. So yeah, we definitely work closely throughout. We work together on that con plan. We do our separate annual action plans, our separate capers, but again, throughout both those processes, we always work closely together. And here's the timeline that we run through. September and through December, we're out in the community doing our citizen participation plan. Of course, this year, given COVID, it was way different than what we usually do. Everything was done for the most part virtual, but usually, of course, we are the county. So we're going out to Ajo, we're going out to Arivaca, Mado, Catalina, you know, all these different places in unincorporated Pima County, getting the word out, what eligible activities are and what the different types of funds can be used for. November through December, we have a 2-phase process where it's a pre-application and a full application. Some of y'all may be familiar with that application process, but on our pre-app phase, it's mainly just screening to ensure it's eligible activities. We're able as staff to provide technical assistance at that point. just determining to ensure that the agency applying is in fact applying for a public service, or should that be a public facility, you know, just providing that TA to make sure they're getting the strongest application submitted. Once that full application is released, it's kind of hands off as far as staff is concerned, unless there's technical issues on submittals and things like that. We do use an online Zoom grant system. That's what we've been using the past few years, and so far it's worked out. This past year, full apps were due January 29th. Throughout February and March, we did a review of those. The funding decisions will be at the first meeting in May, which is the 4th. The board will be making decisions on those funding recommendations. We will submit that document to HUD, as well as some other planning documents in mid-May. And then we start drafting our CAPER, which is our report to HUD, you know, giving them an idea of what we're doing out here with their funds. August through September is when we're out doing monitoring and doing risk assessments with various agencies. And August, kind of until, depending on the project, the agency's ready, we start drafting the contracts. Usually HUD makes those funds available in October. This year was way beyond the norm. I think we got them like in January, which is crazy, you know, but hey, it is what it is. It's one of those things. And then we come to September and December, and kind of it's rinse and repeat for the next year. We also, during this process, during the CDBG process, is we do a call for applications for ESG funding. And again, those are to fund street outreach, emergency homeless assistance, individuals, families, youth, veterans, as well as homeless prevention, emergency shelter, and rapid rehousing. I don't think Jen Darlin, she's our program manager with ESG. She's not on today, but she facilitates that process on behalf of the county. A couple more notes is it must belong to the continuum of care. There are reporting requirements, and there is 100% match with ESG. This past year, we received 83 applications for CDBG at roughly $6 million. The estimate we're looking to get from the feds is right around 2.9. So there's, you know, a lot of asks and not a whole lot of funding, but hey, make do with what we can. And I'm sure Ann and the city get into that same situation as well. With ESG, we received 15 applications at right around $500,000, and we receive around $253,000 every year. There's some dates that we went through this past year. As I mentioned, the pre-app, we opened that up in October. That was due in November. Opened up the full app in mid-December with the due date at the end of January, as well as holding a couple TA sessions virtually on the 27th and the 9th. In addition to that, we reached out to a lot of the various nonprofits that we usually are talking to in rural Pima County, and we did some one-on-one technical assistance sessions with them as well. There's my contact info. Also have Joel Veers sitting in as well. He's a program coordinator with the department, running CDBG programs. And I also have Jen Darlin listed on there, and she's a program manager with the ESG. Like I said, I was gonna be brief, be pretty quick, just take a quick little bit of y'all's time. But again, you guys have any questions on the county process, please feel free to reach out. Send me an email now. We'll get you on the list for next year. We're doing a lot of our outreach. We're more than happy to get out and kind of let you all know what we're doing and what we're all about. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Joel. I have just a couple minutes left, and then I would say let's take questions, including questions for Joel. So wrapping up here, I had left off talking about P-CHIP and incorporating that into the annual action plan. So what are we talking about for the annual action plan in terms of funding? So this slide summarizes what we have as an estimate for fiscal year 2022. This looks really similar to a funding chart we included in P-CHIP. However, it is updated with information from HUD in terms of what we expect to get. Minor differences, really similar. But in terms of what the city of Tucson receives, this is a summary in the people, communities, and homes categories. So in terms of what the process looked like, we completed the P-CHIP plan, and then we immediately released the call for projects for our people funding categories. and it was only for our people funding categories. So in the future, when we have funding that we can disseminate within the communities and the homes, we will do that. But for this next annual action plan, we only released funding in the people categories. As Joel indicated, is really difficult, received way more funding requests than we could possibly fund. As part of that process, we did have committees that were created to score and rank proposals, and then our executive director provided recommendations to mayor and council on how that money should be allocated. And so in terms of our process and the timeline, a little bit different than the counties. So right now we are in the 30-day public comment period on the draft annual action plan. That draft plan is posted on our website, and Rachel or Allison, do you mind putting the link to the draft plan in the chat? Today, we're having a public meeting on the annual action plan. Also, first meeting in May, similar to Joel's, we are looking for the mayor and council. There'll be a public hearing at the mayor and council meeting, and then hoping that there will be adoption of the annual action plan. And then we need to submit the annual action plan to HUD no later than May 15th. In terms of the timeline, one thing I do want to say is we're aware that the timing was not awesome in terms of the amount of time we had to release the call for projects and give the nonprofits time to apply and select. So in the future, we do hope when it is a situation where we're releasing the call for projects for people funding, we do plan on releasing that in the fall to give more time for nonprofits to submit their application and then more time for the committees to review. So this year, the timeline was due to PCHIP, and we won't have that in future years. So that is all on that I'm presenting. I'm going to turn it over to Terry to talk about one thing and field questions.
Yeah, as you see on this last slide, this is kind of a public service announcement. We in the city and the county are partnering to get out some eviction prevention and utility assistance funds. We've received over $30 million from the federal government to do this. So I just wanted to make sure that a lot of you probably are aware of this, and some of you may have clients or neighbors or people that you know in the community that could use this assistance. So this slide here at the top talks a little bit about it and has information on how people can apply. So please, if you have questions about that, or if you know people that need assistance, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with providers. Having done that public service announcement, I wanted to open it up at this time for any questions or comments for either the city or the county. We'd be glad to field any questions or comments and try to do our best to answer. So go ahead if you have any. You can type them in the chat too if you'd like. This is a cactus in my backyard. Oh, go ahead.
No, I want to hear about the cactus in your backyard.
Yeah, see that, the flowers? Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Thank both the city and the county for holding this and for walking us through kind of the steps to get to the end of this process and fund some really great things in the community. And I was really encouraged, especially to see so much funding being put into homelessness prevention and addressing homelessness in what the city has released. I think one concern that I had just looking through the funds was that there are two projects specifically under the older adult priority, which come out to $81,000, which is one of the lowest funding priorities that that is proposed to be funded through this. And so I'm kind of wondering what the justification for that was, since the number 2, I think, population that was mentioned in PCHIP was older adults.
Yeah, I don't have a specific answer for that. We went through there was committees, that reviewed every application, and then there was further review and things like that. Are you talking about a specific project that you think should have been funded, or are you just concerned about the overall amount?
No, I'm more concerned about the overall amount and ensuring that there's enough funding going to older adult services, since it's the fastest growing portion of
Okay.
the population.
No, I appreciate that feedback. And I do know that one of the major agencies, the Pima Council, Pima County, I'm trying to think, Council on Aging.
Council on Aging, I work for them.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I do know that our director did talk to your director about some of the funding, and the questions came up. So, but I appreciate the feedback, and I'll make sure that I get this back to Liz and Liz Morales, our director, and let her know that you have that concern. So thank you
so much.
Any other questions or comments? I got to hear something from Megan. Come on, Megan, you have to have something for me. Is she still on? Okay, here's a question. Here's a question. Is there a plan for when the communities and homes portion of the PCHIP funding will be available? Okay. I don't think we have a timeline on that. Anne, did you want to chime in on that?
Sure, I'm happy to. So the communities funding, we are looking to see what happens with the budget process for the whole city, and thinking about, we know that there's been discussions of a participatory budget process that would lead to projects being funded that are really similar to the CDBG community projects. And so we're waiting to find out what happens with the overall city budget before we want to make sure we're not overcommitting the funding. And so we're hoping in the next couple months to at least know whether we're going to do a release an application and let neighborhood groups and community groups partner with the city on that. So we'll know more on that soon. In terms of the home dollars, we are not looking to release that funding. And Terry, you probably have a better idea of the timeline on that. We have committed the funding at this point, and so
we do have our ongoing down payment assistance program that's still operating, and that's part of that. And we have some tenant-based rental assistance that we're able to help people get into their apartment. But as far as the any type of new construction apartments, right now we're pretty much committed on those funds, I think, for at least until the next fiscal year. Some of our commitments are tied to people applying for low-income housing tax credits through the state, which is a very competitive process. So, we hope that they get those funds, because it brings affordable rentals to our community. But if for some reason one of those or both, a few of those projects don't happen or not awarded low-income housing tax credits, then we may be able to make some funds available later this year, this calendar year. Any other questions, comments?
No, I just want to say thank you for doing this. I'm on the different side of the spectrum. I'm the CEO of the diaper bank, and we often face people come in that, ask for different resources, and particularly with, the older population. And so I'm just appreciative that you guys are doing this, and it really helps me understand what's available. And, I work with Mark very closely as well. So I'm sure he's pretty excited about some of this stuff as well.
Good. And Well, thank you very much for what you do there. I was able to work with the diaper bank when I was at Old Pueblo Community Services in the past, and always a very good partner. So thank you for what you do for the community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Anne or Joel, do you have any final comments or anything you want to say before we sign off?
I just want to do one more thanks. This year's process in terms of learning just really the vast expanse of what all the nonprofit and community groups are doing in Tucson just blew me away. And so really excited to get to work with you more in the future. And so thank you.
Great. Any final comments, Joel?
Yeah, please. Thanks, Terry. And thank you, Ann. Thank you, everybody, for giving me the time to just kind of let you all know about the county process and how we run things down here. And thank you for all the great work you all do out there in the community. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out. You know, if you miss my contact info, that's fine. Just get it on our website. Honestly, reach out. More than happy to get more in depth with you if needed. Thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. All right. Well, we really appreciate everybody participating today. And we, if you have any other comments or questions, you can feel free to contact me or Joel, and we'll be glad to follow up with you. Having said that, I think we can go ahead and conclude today's meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.